On Talking Heads, Tina Arena, one of Australia's biggest selling singers on the world stage. She was once a precocious star of young talent time, known as Tiny Tina. In the decades since, she's reinvented herself as a smouldering chanteuse and enjoyed amazing success, particularly in France. Tina, welcome to Talking Heads.
Hi, Peter. It's nice to be here. Thanks.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, we've added up the numbers, and you've sold nearly 8 million albums.
You've added them up?
Yep. It's between 7 and 8 million.
Wow.
About half of them are in France.
Yeah.
When you do concerts in France, like the Olympia Theatre in Paris, how are your audiences different from Australia?
They're younger, the younger kids kind of get into it. They don't mind the fact that the lyrics are little, it's adult. It's not a lyric that's penned to be directly targeted at a 13-year-old. I'm not kind of going to do that. So they're younger. Australians are probably a little bit more reserved, whereas you know, comparing to the French are mad. You know, they'll clap like the Italians and the Spanish. They'll clap halfway through a song. You know,
jazz.
They'll yell and they'll stand on their feet. You know, I think one of the things that completely flabbergasted me at the end of last year doing shows in Melbourne and Sydney, so every show I did I had a standing ovation, and I went, I've never seen this before in Australia. It was really interesting. I was very, very touched by it.
Does that surprise you, that success you've had in France?
I absolutely went there with no expectations whatsoever, and voila, 10 years later you're a part of the popular musical culture.
Was it that you were fresh to France, that you didn't have baggage?
Yeah, completely. And the great thing was for me was that in those days, because I'd come from carrying fairly heavy baggage in Australia and had to, you know, I had a few challenges, there were a few hurdles to jump. When I walked into France, I could put those bags down and I just went, you know what? This is a clean slate. I'm starting again. I'm really excited about this and no one knows anything about me. Thank you, God.
What's the balance sheet, the pluses and minuses of growing up in public like you have?
The pluses, you get to learn a trade. You get to practice that trade. The minuses is that you are put in a pigeonhole that is pretty difficult to get out of, and the fact that people only really think you're capable of doing one thing, so they can't really think any further than just seeing you from where you come from.
This venue is Hamer Hall. It's my hometown of Melbourne. So we're just going to spend some time in there going through some songs for my promotional tour for Songs of Love and Loss Volume 2. So we've got a little bit of work to do, so let's go. It's important to come home because this is where it all started for me, and it's always very important to get back to your basics and to never ever forget where you come from. I was born in Melbourne in 1967, and this is where I grew up. This is good old Maryborough. It's where I'm from, because this is where Mum and Dad live.
Yeah.
Ready? Cheers! Chin. Welcome home. You got to look in the eyes.
I have two siblings. This afternoon we'll be catching up with my older sister Nancy.
Chin chin. Santé.
My parents had immigrated to Australia from Sicily. They taught each and every one of us to believe that a dream is completely realisable, providing you work for it. The first time I ever sang publicly was at my cousin Gaetano's wedding when I was 5 years old and I was the flower girl, and I asked Dad to sing. Sang the song and 400 people stood to their feet and I ran off stage sobbing my eyes out because I couldn't quite understand the reaction. I do remember that moment. It was a moment of pleasure and pain. So the MC of the wedding approached my parents. I'm going to give you a business card of this woman. Her name is Voila Ritchie. She's in Sydney Road, Brunswick. She teaches Farnham. She taught Rick Springfield. Go and see Voila, because I think your daughter has got something that's really, really unusual. Had a half an hour singing lesson, and she just sort of said to my dad, I want to put her on Young Talent Time. And my father went, what? She's a baby. And Voila goes, I know, but trust me, Mr. Arena, on this one, please.
I figure if you hadn't been to that wedding, it would have been some other occasion. It was inevitable.
Or maybe it would never have been, full stop.
Really?
Well, you never know.
No,
Maybe not.
not with that voice.
I felt a real need to sing that night. And my father is a very shy man. Beautiful man, very shy. I pestered him the entire evening and sort of said, Papa, I want to sing. And he's like, darling, there's a band, there's a singer, everything's there. You can sing at home. I was like, no, I have to sing.
So your parents, they weren't the pushy stage parent type?
No, the absolute contrary. I remember my mother telling me a story only just a few years ago, actually. When she was a young lady, she went to the theatre. And apparently there was this child on stage that Mum was just quite fascinated by and was really kind of honed into, and went and turned around to her mother-in-law, my nana, and said, geez, I'd love a child like that one day. What an interesting child. Lo and behold, careful what you wish for.
So did you grow up in those early days? I don't know whether you even remember this, but did you see yourself as Sicilian or as Aussie?
It was a very Italian household. It was a very traditional household. There was a lot of love, but there was a lot of discipline. And there was no room for pretentiousness. Really, there just wasn't.
What would they have wanted for you?
I know my father wanted a university degree. That soon changed. My parents always knew that's what I wanted to be, and I feel very privileged to have found something that I love doing as early on as what I did.
I appeared on Young Talent Time as a contestant in the mid-70s. I would have probably been 6 years old. My full name is Filipina Lydia Arena. I was called Pina for short. Of course, Pina Arena was not an incredibly elegant name for TV. John Young was actually the gentleman who suggested to my family and myself in the 70s to change the P to a T. I spent a total of 7 years on the show and finished being a part of the show my last show was October 22nd, 1983, 2 weeks before I turned 16 years old.
What did you imagine lay ahead when you left the show?
Trouble.
It's true, as it turned out. That era's gone, hasn't it, do you think?
Oh, yeah, well and truly, it went a long time ago.
There was an innocence.
There was an innocence, and that was that is why it was beautiful. The objective was to make a great show for families to watch between 6:30 and 7:30, with kids singing and dancing and watching that beautiful natural progression.
You know, if you were setting up a show like that these days, you'd have a bunch of psychological counsellors on the side ready to look after the kids, wouldn't you?
Well, I think you'd need it, you know. I think you need it, because...
I presume you've got none of that.
I had to counsel myself, and you know, I was fortunate enough to have some really beautiful girlfriends who are still in my life today from school. They didn't love Tina Arena, they didn't care about her, they cared about Pina.
And were you Pina to them?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
How can you be brought up in your circumstances, you know, given the showbiz stuff, without being the princess? Were you the princess at home?
No, I wasn't allowed. As I said, my older sister was very firm, and she made sure that she was the older one. She asserted that. The baby got away with murder because she's the baby. And I was the one in the middle.
Well, it's often said that the one in the middle is the one that struggles with identity.
Probably a lot of truth to that. I still struggle with identity. Don't be fooled. I still struggle. Of course I do.